Good morning, everyone. Okay, so we have started with JSON introduction yesterday. I have told you that JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Now, this is one of the common language that is used in almost every sort of integrations, right? So this one is a universally accepted language which is being used to perform the integration between two distinguished systems, all right? So when considering, considering Salesforce side, so yesterday I have told that whenever we would be trying to integrate Salesforce with some other external third-party system, so that third-party system, that external system could be built up with a separate technology, and it's not like it's always going to be an integration between Salesforce to Salesforce. Although we tried that as well, but there were certain limitations. If I talk about what are the limitations of Salesforce to Salesforce integration, we can see that maximum what you could do is over this integration, maximum what we can achieve is that you can transfer one single record from one Salesforce organization to another one, and beyond that we cannot perform any operation with Salesforce. So there are a lot of limitations, and it's obviously is not a practical solution when we consider integrations in practical, when we consider integrations in real time. This Salesforce to Salesforce integration does not provide any particular business solutions rather. And that is the reason I have told you that I haven't worked in real time. I have not worked with Salesforce to Salesforce integration in any of my use case. That is just a topic, and it is something that Salesforce can perform. So you should have an idea. You should have an idea how, without writing a code, we can also perform the integration. Because maybe it might be possible that some of you would going to get the chance to work on the Salesforce MuleSoft. So MuleSoft basically, although is like it is, I'm not saying that it is completely in the beta version, but then there are certain limitation, the coverage of that, the bandwidth of the MuleSoft is limited. Of course, it is limited, but then it is providing a very promising solution for declarative integrations where you can literally perform an integration without writing a code. And what we did in the past, what we attempt to did, like we tried to connect two Salesforce environment, was just an example of that. It was a very small clip. It was an introduction, right? It was just a trailer that how somehow this is like MuleSoft also work somehow in the same manner, that without writing code, how you can integrate two different Salesforce environments. Although MuleSoft, when you're talking about MuleSoft, don't think like it's always connect Salesforce with Salesforce. No. It's not like that. It can connect Salesforce with any environment without writing a code. All right. So that is going to be a very good thing. And maybe in the coming future, maybe in coming months or days or future in the years, we would be going to have a full-fledged version of the MuleSoft. Like right now, we have a full-fledged version of Copado. We have a full-fledged version of CPQ. Yeah, definitely, it gets updated as and when Salesforce would get update. And after every 3 months, after every 3 months, Salesforce come up with certain releases. That releases could bring up a small update in those packages, that those tools. So Copado is fully developed. It is fully functionalized. Same way CPQ, same way Velocity. MuleSoft is little bit is something on which Salesforce is working right now. Like Salesforce is developing a very promising product called Einstein GPT. That is under beta version. They're trying to they are trying to almost integrate everything. So that is again something which is going on in the Salesforce, and very soon we're going to witness those excellent products. All right. So let me now start the discussion. Yesterday we got an idea about how JSON actually works as a mediator language between two sensitive systems, where one of them would be the Salesforce, the another one could be built up with any promising technology. But when we wanted to perform an integration, there is one common language which everyone follows these days, and that language is JSON language. Now let's try to understand how the format of JSON looks like to be. And for example, if you see a string that is in the form of JSON, so you should understand what data it's actually is presenting. All right, so let's talk about JSON only. See, JSON is always represented like this. JSON is always represented like this. If you can see the screen, JSON is always represented like this, the highlighted portion. Now, what does it mean? Every JSON always starts with an opening curly bracket. It always ends on the ending curly bracket. That means, so that means JSONs are always represented. JSON are always represented within curly brackets. It always starts and ends with a curly bracket. It always starts and ends with a curly bracket. All right. So that is what is a JSON. Now, beyond this, JSON is like something called as a key value pair. JSON is always a key value pair. Key value, something like a map collection. If you remember, map collection is also a similar kind of thing where every value inside, every record inside a map collection is always represented like this only, key value pair. In the same way, JSON is always represented like this, key and value, where key is always unique. Value could be unique, could be different as well. The next to this is key should always be a string. This is mandatory. This is mandatory. Key should always be a string. Key should always have to be a string. If you try to give any apart from string, if you try to give any other value, maybe a numerical thing or something, or spatial symbol, so it's going to give you parser errors. Parser. I'm going to clarify what does it means by the parser error. Or maybe you know this, like you have started with the Lightning, so you probably know that there are two types of scripting: server-side scripting, client-side scripting. Server-side codes, client-side code. Whatever your browser is going to check is client-side. Whatever you're writing in Apex, like you have written the classes, triggers, and all that, they are server-side. They are server-side codes, right? So this JSON format, the JSON which we are learning, this has been checked. This is going to be checked in both server side as well as on the client side. So the key has to be, key has to be a string. Always it always has to be a string. Value could also be a string. Value could be a number, a numerical value, a Boolean value, array, or an S object, a Salesforce object. It could be anything out of this context. It could be anything. But compulsorily key has to be a string, right? So this is a plain simple syntax of JSON. This is a small example. For example, JSON always starts and ends with what? It always starts and ends with a curly bracket. And then name, because key is a string. So because it's a name, one more thing I just forgot to mention, like, I'll have to remove this, It is not mandatory that value should be quoted in the double inverted comma. Key should always be enclosed within double inverted comma. Why it is like that? Because that is a string. That is a string. And inside in the JSON format, the strings are always written within double inverted comma. And if your value, if your value is also a string, you have to give it. Again, strings are always given. There's only one rule. You don't have to remember, like, this is one rule number one and rule number two. There's only one rule. Strings are always enclosed within double inverted comma. Now, because key is always a string, key is always a string. It must always be written within this double inverted comma. Value, it depends. If the value is a string, it would going to be written like this. If it is numerical, it's going to be written directly. We're going to talk about this. I would be covering everything. What happens, how to write down when a value is string, how to write it down when a value is numerical, Boolean, array, or an S object. We would going to see every out of this. Right. So let's talk about that. There's a lot of theory over here. I just wanted you guys to go with all of them one by one. I'm just trying to see, like, what I can explain. Yeah. Now let's talk about like how we would going to represent JSONs, right? So this was an example about string. If your value is a string, if your value, see, key is always going to be a string. There's no second thought about this. Key is always going to be a string. Yeah. Value, if the value is also a string, it is again would be enclosed within this double inverted comma. The second, if the value is numerical, if the value is a number, if the value, key is always going, make this as your thumb rule, never forgot this. Key always going to be string. If it's a JSON, the first thing what you noted is always key, and keys are always written inside double inverted comma inside in JSON format. In the JSON, the first thing what we see is always a key, and keys are always string. Keys are always string. The first thing what you see is a key. Keys are always strings. Key does not have any other data type apart from the string. It always is going to be a string, and strings are always written inside double inverted comma. And that's the reason you see everywhere in the first place you see this, right? And then there's a separator, colon. Sorry, I forgot to mention even that. I shouldn't ignore this. There is a separator. There is a separator between key and value, and that separator is colon. That colon symbol, this acts as a separator between key and the value. And see, so if the value is also a string, you have to enclose it within like this. If value is a number, you can give it directly. You can give it direct. Number means both whole number and floating point number, integer number as well as decimal numbers, right? It would consist of both of them. So that was like, that was like what happens when the value is a number. If the value is a string, as you can see, strings are always written like this only. All right. Now, what about Boolean? Boolean, there are only two things, true or false. Boolean always have two values. If there is a Boolean, it could either be true or it could either be false. All right. So what about Boolean? How we can write down Booleans? So Booleans, they are also written directly without double inverted comma. The value of the Boolean, true or false, you can write it down directly. The values inside in the JSON format, if the value is Boolean, you can write it directly. Directly means true or false. What about arrays? So what is an array, first of all? Array is a collection, a sort of collection. Like we studied, actually we have studied 4 different forms of collections: list, set, and map, as well as arrays. Array provide, like, array is also a collection. It's a set, but it's a set of homogeneous element, all similar kind of elements. You cannot have multiple forms of data inside an array. So if an array is declared to be an integer array, it would going to have all the values of all the integer values rather. If an array, in the beginning itself, you have to define the data type of that. Without giving data type, you cannot define an array. Without mentioning the size, you cannot define an array. We have studied the differences between arrays and collections. Arrays are homogeneous element collections, whereas collections, list, set, and map, they can be homogeneous, they can be heterogeneous as well. Array provide you something called as a static memory allocation, whereas collections, list, set, and map, They provide something called as, they follow something called as dynamic memory allocations. So that means the size of array is fixed and has to be declared. Has to be declared in the beginning itself. While you are creating an array, you have to mention the size as well and data type as well. There are two mandatory declarations in the beginning itself. Whenever we are creating an array, array must be created along with data type as well as with the size. You can supply the size in two ways. You can directly give the size. Otherwise, you can enter the elements. You can give in that curly brackets. You can enter the elements based on how many. What is the count of element? The runtime engine would going to calculate the size of that. So indirectly, but yeah, size has been given. So if we wanted to represent an array inside in the JSON format, how we are going to do that? How we are going to do that? This is the syntax. As you can see, JSON always starts and ends with curly bracket. Then you have to give key. Key is always string. So strings are enclosed within double inverted comma. Then there is a separator element called as colon. Colon acts as a separator between key and value. And then this symbol. You are aware about the symbol. This is square bracket. Square bracket. So square bracket actually represents array. And then every value inside the array. Now see, how the values are going to be represented, that depends. That depends on the type of value. If the value is integer, you can write it down directly. Numbers are always written directly, like this. For example, this is just an example. Define an array to store, or rather, this is an array. All right, let me talk about the end outcome of this. This is an array. This is an array. You can see. Now, this array is an integer array. Integer array. And the name of this array is customer codes. Size haven't given, but the values have been given. So based on how many values are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Based on how many values have been defined while defining the array, compiler would going to calculate the size. And it came to know that, oh, there are 6 integer values. So the size of this array would be 6. So indirectly, but size is given, right? Now, this is an array and we wanted to convert this in JSON. This is an array. We wanted to convert this as JSON. See, there's a lot of theoretical thing and you have to understand this whole thing. This we would, we would be going to represent every entity, whatever we are learning right now, we would be going to represent them inside in Apex program. We are going to create the classes where everything, whatever we are learning so far would be used. We are going to use every single entity over there. So please concentrate. I can understand this. Everything is a theoretical thing. It's become difficult, especially अभी अपन सुबेरे उठे हुए हैं और उसमें इतना concentrate करना could be a difficult thing. I can understand. And it's a virtual class. Virtual class, I cannot see you. You cannot see me. So it's really a challenge. It's a very difficult thing to concentrate. I can understand that. That's a human tendency. We are not robots. But yes, this is important. This is important, right? I can do one thing would be like, I can start writing this whole thing and then I could explain, but that would be simply a waste of time. These are very simple things, guys. These are very simple things. If I would start teaching this to school going kid, अगर मैं 5th और 7th के बच्चों को भी ये पढ़ाऊंगा ना, even they would also understand this. This is as simple as like this. और आज की डेट में तो स्कूल के सिलेबस में भी यार आई एम शॉक टू नो दैट मेरा बेटा HTML पढ़ रहा है और उसको नेक्स्ट ईयर पाइथन है. आई एम सिंपली शॉक टू नो what kind of syllabus these guys are planning for, what they wanted kids to become. कैसा होता है? There's always a state of maturity, but that has to be found at a certain age. ये इतना ऐसा पढ़ा देंगे तो फिर हम लोग का क्या होगा? Anyways, but I'm absolutely sure if I would going to teach the same thing to a school going kid, even they would also understand. It's as simple as like this. JSON is very simple to understand. So this is an array. And I wanted to convert this into JSON format. All right. Let me start with that. What is that symbol? And JSON always starts and ends with a symbol. What is that symbol? So everyone in the class would raise the hand and they will say, sir, it would always starts and ends with a curly bracket. All right, I would write down that curly bracket, starting and ending curly bracket. All right. Now tell me, what is the very first thing in always? That's always inside a JSON. What is the very first thing? They would again raise the hand. They will say, it's always a key. Very good. What is the data type of key? It's always going to be a string. Very good. Now strings are always written within double inverted comma. So because the array name was customer code, so I have written the key as customer code. And because customer code is a string, that always has to be enclosed like this. Then there is a separator symbol, colon. And now the values of array. Values of array. So you just have seen with this syntax that arrays values, they are always enclosed within square bracket because that represents it's an array. That represents it's an array. अच्छा, moreover, थोड़ा सा अगर हम array वाला नाम अगर मैं हटा के एक बात बोलूं कि अगर मतलब थोड़ा सा डाइजेस्ट करो उसको, अगर मैं कहूं कि ये जो सिंबल है ना अपना स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट वाला, ये वैसे तो अरे है मतलब ऑफ कोर्स, लेकिन इसको हम यूज करते हैं उस वक्त जब हमको मल्टीपल वैल्यूज को रिप्रेजेंट करना होता है, जब हमको मल्टीपल वैल्यूज को रिप्रेजेंट करना पड़ता है। और एक पेचीदा बात और है उसमें कि दोज मल्टीपल वैल्यूज are of similar data type. Now, why I am saying like this? You would going to know this. Why I have elaborated this definition apart from the legacy one? Why I have elaborated this one? You're going to understand this. So whenever you have multiple values of same data type, you have multiple values of same data type. Let's say you are having all multiple values of integer. You have multiple values of integer. You have multiple values of string. You have multiple values of date, ID. You know, they always are going to be written inside in this square bracket. बस रिमेम्बर इतना याद रखो। तो मैं इसको आगे कहाँ इस्तेमाल करता हूँ मैं बताऊंगा आगे चल के। एक चीज आएगी जिसको जब वो मुझे पढ़ाना पड़ेगा तो फिर मैं आपको बताऊंगा। देखो मैंने एक वक्त तुमसे कहा था कि whenever you have multiple forms, multiple data of same form, whenever you have multiple data, data 1, data 2, data 3, not just value, data बोल रहा हूँ अब मैं, and all of them are of same form, account record 1, account record 2, account record 3, contact record 1, contact record 2, contact record 3, contact record n. If I would ask you, what is this record? You will say contact record. What is the second one? That's also a contact record. What is going to be the data type of these two records? Contact. There are multiple records, of course. What is the data type of individual of them? S object contact. तो जब भी हम इस तरह से, ये मैं क्यों डिस्कशन कर रहा हूँ, आई एम जस्ट प्रिपेयरिंग अ बैकग्राउंड, एक थोड़ा सा ऐसा जमीन बना रहा हूँ तुम्हारे दिमाग में कि इसका सिमिलर एक डिस्कशन है जो हम आगे करने वाले हैं। तो whenever you would see multiple records of same data type, multiple values of same data type, they are always enclosed, they are always written within that square bracket array symbol. तो यहाँ हमने देखा कि हमारे पास अरेज की मल्टीपल वैल्यूज थी, तो हमने उसको कैसा लिख दिया, विद इन दिस स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट। ठीक है। अब सेकंड अरे है आपके पास में, एक स्ट्रिंग अरे है, जैसे ये एक इंटीजर अरे था, इसी तरह का एक स्ट्रिंग अरे है जिसकी वैल्यूज, ये सारी वैल्यूज हैं उसमें, ये सारी वैल्यूज हैं, इनको हमें जेसन में रिप्रेजेंट करना है। सो नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज कन्वर्ट दिस अरे इनटू जेसन, convert this array into JSON. How we would going to write it? All right. So JSON always starts and ends with what? A curly bracket. So I have written a curly bracket, starting and ending curly bracket. What is the very first entity in the JSON? It's always a key. What is the data type of the key? It's always a string. How the strings are written? They are always written inside double inverted comma. All right. What is the name of this array? Country name. So country name is going to become the key of this. And because country name is a string, it always have to be a string that is written inside double inverted comma. After that, what is their value? What acts as a separator between key and value? There is a symbol called as colon. So colon acts as a separator. I have written colon. Now, how many values you wanted to represent? Multiple values. Why multiple? Because we are converting an array. All right. So these values of these individual values of array, These individual values of array, every value of this array is a string because this is a string array. Every value, USA, India, Australia, Japan, all of them are string. So values are string. Values are string. अच्छा देखो ये क्यों मैं इतना आपको यहाँ पे एग्जांपल क्यों लिया? देखिए एक कॉमन कंफ्यूजन होता है हमको। एपेक्स जब हम लिखते हैं, एपेक्स में स्ट्रिंग्स आर रिटन विद इन सिंगल इन्वर्टेड कॉमा, राइट? हमने जहां भी एपेक्स में स्ट्रिंग लिखा है, द स्ट्रिंग्स वी हैव रिटन इनसाइड सिंगल इन्वर्टेड कॉमा। लेकिन जेसन फॉर्मेट में जब आप उसको रिप्रेजेंट करते हो, द स्ट्रिंग्स आर ऑलवेज रिटन, they're always written within double inverted comma, right? So observe this difference. Observe this difference. The way you write down a string, the way the string value is given inside Apex, the value is written inside JSON. Same. Though there's a difference between that, right? Observe this difference. All right. So there were multiple string values. There were multiple string values, right? Even over here as well. So this is first value, the second. So we have separated them. All the values have been separated using comma. Same is going to be right. Same is going to be used over here. We would separate every value with a comma. That's very common thing, I guess. Now, because these are strings value have to be enclosed. Every individual string value have to be enclosed, have to be written within double inverted comma. So this is like JSON format. This is like JSON format of this. Now let me try to show you something. So I have shown you one example of postal pin code API, isn't it? And that time the response what we get was in the JSON format. That for that time you were unaware about this, right? You were being unaware about this. Let me try to show you. I would just show you that. See, if you would give this input 440024 or any pin code to this, it would going to return you, right? It would going to return you this. It would going to return you this like this, right? Let me now try to copy this message and let me try to show you how does this right. Like, see, this is that message, right? I would, I would be just going to bifurcate this. Let me just try to make it more readable for you guys. Now see, this is a response what this web service is giving. Whenever you would give any pin code as an input to this, it would give you this response. So this we have seen, right? Prior to this, like I guess 3 or 4 days in the last week, we have seen this response. I have told you there is a website. There's a website which can give you this all pin code details. You have, but the response would be like this. That time you don't know, you don't understand this. But now, just looking into this response, you can understand this is a JSON response. JSON response, square bracket. Why? Because there could be multiple responses of this. हो सकता है multiple हो, multiple data, इसलिए square bracket. ठीक है? And then every single record inside JSON is always enclosed within single inverted comma. This is something called as header part. इसको header part बोलते हैं. Again a square bracket because there might be different ये वाले records और भी हो सकते हैं. जैसे मैंने जब 440024 डाला तो that time there was multiple records. आप देखो यहाँ पे बहुत सारे records आ गए है ना. दिगोरी नाका, हनुमान नगर, मानेवाड़ा, बहुत सारे आ गए. तो उसकी वजह से क्या हुआ कि ये जो वैल्यूज हैं, दीज एवरी सिंगल वैल्यू इज बीइंग रिटन इनसाइड इन दिस। हो सकता है अगर एक और वैल्यू होती तो ये इस तरह से होती। फिर अगर मान के चलो ऐसा एक और ये जो जो भी है ये 2 1 का अगर कोई एक और होता तो वो इस तरह से नजर आ रहा होता आपको ऐसा। इसीलिए ये दे आर एनक्लोज विद इन दिस स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट। चलो ये सब बाद में समझ लेंगे। ये देखो आप, ये रिस्पॉन्स को देखो आप, हर एक एंटिटी, see how it has been noted, see how it has been written. The first is always a string, the first is always a key, keys are always strings, strings are enclosed within what? Strings are always enclosed within double inverted comma, isn't it? Strings are always enclosed within double inverted comma. Now the value, if the value is also a string, it is being written inside in this, otherwise अगर नंबर है बट इसको 44024 को स्ट्रिंग डेटा टाइप दिया हुआ है, इस वजह से ये भी एनक्लोज किया हुआ। अदरवाइज इफ इट्स अ नंबर, लेट्स से इफ इट्स अ नंबर इट कैन बी रिटन लाइक दिस एज वेल। तो ये होता है जेसन फॉर्मेट। देखिए आप, ये होता है जेसन फॉर्मेट, ये होता है जेसन फॉर्मेट। ठीक है। सो तो वी आर जस्ट ट्राइंग टू सी लाइक हाउ द थिंग्स हैव बीन रिप्रेजेंटेड इन जेसन। सो अरेज तक हम पहुंच गए हैं, अरेज तक हम पहुंच गए हैं। लेट मी गो विद द ऑब्जेक्ट एज वेल। तो ये आज का अगर खत्म कर लिया हमने, सो आई वुड गोइंग टू गिव यू सर्टन एग्जांपल्स। ये एग्जांपल्स मैं आपको होमवर्क में दे देता हूँ so that I could start with JSON parser. Let me decide onto this fact. नहीं, ये रहने दो, ये मैं ही पढ़ाऊंगा और मैं ही लूंगा। रहने दो। There wouldn't be any homework for you at least for now. ठीक है, ठीक है, इतना ही रखो आज। Let's break down the topic, right? Let's break down the topic. ऑब्जेक्ट से मैं कल लेता हूँ, बिकॉज ऑब्जेक्ट के ऊपर फिर आपको जेसन पार्सर, जेसन जनरेटर क्लासेस पढ़नी है। you'll have to understand JSON generator. JSON generator और JSON parcel would completely depends on to this discussion. इसलिए इसको इतना ही रहने दो, आज हम इतना ही समझते हैं। हाँ, बाय द वे इफ यू वांटेड टू डू समथिंग, आज अगर आप कुछ पढ़ना चाहते हो तो जितना ये हमने पढ़ा है इसको लिख लेना एक बार या टाइप कर लेना। फॉर एग्जाम्पल दिस इज एन array, convert this array into JSON. Now you have the solution for here, but या तो टाइप कर लेना इसको, टाइपिंग वुड बी अ गुड थिंग, या फिर लिख लेना। लिखने से अच्छा है कि टाइप करना चाहिए। ठीक है। तो ऐसे जो दो चार जो एग्जांपल्स हैं यहाँ पे, ऐसे जो दो चार एग्जांपल्स हैं यहाँ पे, ठीक है, वो सारे एग्जांपल जरा सा आज एक बार आप लोग टाइप करके देख लो। So, कल मैं स्टार्ट करता हूँ कि अगर ऑब्जेक्ट है तो हाउ वुड यू रिप्रेजेंट एन ऑब्जेक्ट। अभी हमने क्या क्या देखा कि हाउ वुड यू रिप्रेजेंट अ स्ट्रिंग वैल्यू, न्यूमेरिकल वैल्यू एंड अरे वैल्यू, also boolean. But how would you represent an S object? Object type, single record and multiple records, both of them. How would you represent a single object record or multiple object record into JSON format? This is more important because हम जब डील करेंगे अभी प्रोग्राम्स में, अभी जब हम प्रोग्राम्स में डील करेंगे तो वी वुड बी रिप्रेजेंटिंग देम एज एन ऑब्जेक्ट। हम ऑब्जेक्ट लेंगे उसका ना, ऑब्जेक्ट का रिकॉर्ड रहेगा, कॉन्टेक्ट ऑब्जेक्ट रह सकता है, कोई भी ऑब्जेक्ट रह सकता है। तो ये थोड़ा सा इंपॉर्टेंट रहेगा, इसलिए इसको आज स्प्लिट कर देते हैं, कल इस पर चर्चा करते हैं। दैट्स ऑल फॉर टुडे। Yeah. Any questions around this? Anybody wanted to have any discussion? Please go ahead.